This video is about a Kawasaki Z550 Ltd from 1980, set up for one-armed riding. Yes, set up for a brachial plexus injury, and I'm going to call this biking on the cheap, or should I say modified biking on the cheap. You can still buy these bikes for 800 quid as a running bike registered on the UK roads, and the cost of modifications 100 quid maybe, something like that, to get it so you can ride it with one arm. And that is basically means you're going to be spending about £1,000, but you'll be back on the road cheap as chips. So why have I chosen an old Kawasaki 550? Well, after being on the big RD and getting back on a bike on that, within about 6 months I decided, I love riding so much I need to ride all year round, but I don't want to ruin my Harley in the rain and the salt and all that horrible weather. So what could I use? And I remembered back in 1985 I had a Z550 Ltd, and I remember it being easy to work on, easy to maintain, easy to modify, and easy to ride. It's not a big heavy bike, hasn't got too much power. So I thought, wonder what they go for these days. Found one online. It was about 800 quid, I think. Running UK bike. Looked at the pictures, I thought, if I want to make it like I rode in the 1980s, flat bars, flat seat, and that's all you need to do really. Decided, take the plunge, go ahead and do it. Got it delivered and had a quick look around it, fired it up, ran. It was a bit rough, petrol dripping out of it, the usual. First thing I noticed was I didn't like the riding position. It was far too sit up and beg, and the bars came back a bit too far. The seat was a king and queen seat. Didn't really suit for one-armed riding, or at least it certainly didn't really suit me at that period. I like to lean forward a little bit with a bit of weight on my arms. So I thought, I'm going to change them. Got a set of drag bars, bolt them on. Decided that's much better. And then I thought, well, the seat really needs to go. So found a nice little flat old bendy banana seat from the 1980s, and I thought that'll do. Now, my fabrication skills not being much, i.e. rubbish, I thought, I know who to get involved in this. Yes, you guessed it, Nick. So he drove all the way over from Ross-on-Wye with his welder on board his truck and some tools, and we set about modifying the bike. We basically just cut all the lugs off the top frame, welded a plate across so you could bolt the seat down. Actually modifying it for one-arm riding wasn't that difficult. In fact, very easy. Because I'd put drag bars on, I didn't have a lot of space. So I couldn't use the original Kawasaki master cylinder setup. It was too big. So I needed one with a remote reservoir. So I got one of those. Couldn't use the original Kawasaki clutch lever perch because that had a safety cutout switch and the mirror mount all built in. It's far too big and bulky. So I just bought a very simple one from eBay for a trials bike, which is basically just a clutch perch and that's it, nothing else built in. And the throttle assembly wouldn't work off the Kawasaki either. So you just want a very simple 2-cable, like on a drag bike. And you can buy that very cheap off eBay. And the slimmest switchgear you can find. So the whole lot, let's see, throttle assembly is about £10. Switchgear, say that's £10. Clutch, £10. The master cylinder was about 25, so 55 quid. Now you'll be able to recoup all that by selling all the original Kawasaki stuff on eBay because people want the original gear. So in fact, it shouldn't really cost you anything. And again, same with the seat. If you sell off that original big king and queen seat, you'll probably get 50-60 quid. And the little bendy seat that I bought was probably less than that. So far, it hasn't really cost you anything. That's good, isn't it? Now, I did decide to do a few other little modifications to the bike, as well as the one arm setup. I like the idea of moving the rear mudguard round. Instead of having a huge rear mudguard hanging all the way over the back wheel, I want it to be as short as possible with a little trials tail light on it. So that's quite simple to do. You literally just push it further around the bike, cut the plastic mudguard down, bolt the two together, and away you go. Front mudguard also sits very high up, so I actually drilled that and dropped that down, so that was hugging a lot more. Also switched out the indicators and the mirrors for much more slim looking ones. The whole idea was really to get it sort of slimline flat tracker style, mild custom, nothing too radical, standard wheels, standard brakes, standard forks. The only thing I did do, the rear shocks are completely knackered, and I bought a set of shorter shocks which made the bike look very cool. But after riding around on them for 6 months, I got rid of them, went and got some Hagen's, the original length, and the bike was far nicer to ride. There was just not enough travel, and they were too hard, and they were horrible. Cheap rubbish. Better off going for something decent. The other good thing about these old Kawasaki's is they're really simple and bulletproof engines to work on. So electronic ignition is standard. Easy enough to do the valve clearances, just whip the cam cover off. If you have to take a cam out to change the shim, it's not a big deal really. So it took about 3 months in all to get it from what I bought to what you see in the pictures here. It ran not brilliantly. Obviously no airbox on it, so that doesn't help at all. In the end I took it off to Grant at GP Performance, who set it up. Got the carbs balanced, bigger mains in it, tweaked it, took it off for its MOT, and it passed that. Lo and behold, I now had a bike I could use all year round. As all of you who out there who ride bikes every day, or did, we all know how quickly the weather can take its toll. So didn't take long before there was the odd issue. One time riding into work, literally within about half a mile of work, bike just completely went dead. Turned out the wiring to the IC igniter had basically corroded and rotted. Now this was going to turn out to be a bit of a problem with this bike over the years, is the wiring. 40 plus year old Japanese wiring isn't the best. Let's be quite honest. You do need to keep on top of it. You do need to make sure your connectors are clean. You do need to check your earth points. I've had to replace the IC igniter, and not only that, but I had coils fail as well. And of course, what do? You go onto eBay, you go, oh, well, get a new set of coils. Oh, these are cheap. Well, that's a mistake, isn't it? And I must have got through about 3 sets of coils in less than 2 years. So went and talked to Grant, and he said, well, are you buying that Chinese crap off eBay? And I go, yeah. He said, well, don't. Go and buy a set of slingshot coils from the 1980s and put those on, and you won't have any more problems. And guess what? He was right. Got a set of coils from a 750 slingshot, bolt them on, and haven't had any trouble since then. Of course, you still have to do routine maintenance, so, chain sprocket sets needs replacing every now and again. Tyres need replacing, and plugs, and, it's just routine maintenance. Now, if you want to modify one of these yourself, I'll just do a little bit of a quick run through. As you can see in this picture, the remote reservoir front brake stacked next to the indicator setup, which is then stacked next to the clutch clamp and the starter button, which is then next to the throttle assembly. Because I've got lower bars on, I couldn't run the throttle assembly the usual way up with cables coming out underneath, so I've literally just spun it round, got them coming out the top. When you lose the right hand switch gear from a Kawasaki, that's where your starter button is and your headlight button is. When I took the seat off, obviously where the seat lock was is gone, and I actually put a switch in there, a 3-pole switch, so you could have off, side lights, headlight. Not necessarily the best idea, because if you ever want to turn the lights on and you're on the bike, you can't reach them, so you have to get off the bike and do it that way. And not impossible, but put it like this, I'm changing it now. As you can also see, the centre console's missing, and the reason is it basically disintegrated when I took it off. It's 40-year-old plastic, and it just nah, had enough. So what I did was, if you notice in the tacho, there's this thing saying stop lamp, which was Kawasaki's bright idea of telling you every time you put the brake on, the brake light worked. Really stupid. Can you imagine it? Nighttime, coming up to a roundabout in the wet, put the brakes on, and this big red light comes on in your clocks, and it's not only does it blind you, you think, God, the oil lights come on. My one back in the 1980s, I disconnected it. But in this case, I turned it into the neutral light, and then I put a couple of LEDs, one for high, low beam, one for turn signal. And as you can see, there's nothing on the left handlebar apart from a mirror and a Velcro grip. So what's it like to ride? Well, exactly what I was hoping for, really. Very easy to ride. You can ride it pretty much anywhere. If I've got a hospital appointment or something like that, or I've got to get into the middle of town with a load of traffic, I'll take this, filter really easily on it. It's a tiny little thing. Doesn't weigh much, didn't cost much, so you're not frightened about if there's a bit of damage on it or you scratch the paint or something like that. If it gets all salted up and rained on, well, that's what they were designed for back then. Now, it has kept going over the years. It's now getting quite tired. In fact, the last time I went out on it, it blew a fork seal. And when it did that, it then dumped all its fork oil all over the front brake. So it's kind of not sat in disgrace, but there's no point in riding it if you've got oil all over one of the brakes. And it's now being worked on. Obviously, fork seals, new front brake pads, clean the brakes up. I think I'm going to stick some new indicators on it. Well, when I started delving into that and the wiring, shall we say, I've decided I'm going to rewire it from scratch. It's basically, like I said, 40-year-old wiring. It's got a lot of corrosion in the wire itself. So the actual copper is corroded in the insulation. And it's starting to build up resistance. And we all know what will happen in the end. There'll be more and more resistance and more voltage drop until either it doesn't work at all or it could catch fire if the wiring gets too hot, which we don't want at all. So it's having a bit of a rewire, also take the carbs off, give them a good clean out. I know one of the float bowls has the overflow broken off, and that was the previous owner, so when they got a set of float bowls for it. If you're looking for a cheap bike to modify, this is the sort of thing you want. You can still buy most of the parts for it. Some of the electronic stuff's starting to get a bit hard to find, and some of the body parts are starting to get a bit rare. So they're a great little bike that the Japanese knew how to design midweights. I mean, you could have a GS550. They're very similar. The engine's slightly different, peakier. Suzuki's a bit peakier than the Kawasaki. Kawasaki's got a little bit more mid-range grunt. I should know, I've had both. But the best thing, of course, about these old Jap bikes is if you owned one in, let's say, 1984 or 1985, and here we are, 2024, so nearly 40 years ago. You get on one and you're off down the road, scream it up through the box, so 7,000-8,000 RPM, and it's making a lot of noise, but it's not actually going very fast. And then you come around through a few bends or a roundabout, you throw it around, and you go, oh, this is proper biking. Don't handle particularly well, but it makes you feel like you're a teenager again, or early 20s, whichever you like. And that's the big bonus of these things. Puts a huge smile on your face. Even if you're riding it in November and it's peeing down the rain, you still get a smile on your face. And you park it up, get off it. People walk up to you and go, I had one of those back in the day. You feel like turning around and say, well, you should still have one, shouldn't you? Because they're a shitload of fun.